I have never gone into battle that I did not expect to be killed. I have seen those who had no thought of death coming to them killed outright. Thus, Corporal George Horton, wounded at South Mountain, wrapped his handkerchief around his wounded arm and carried the colors of our regiment to Antietam. Being asked why he did not make the best of it and go to the hospital, he was liable to be killed, he answered, "The bullet has not been molded to kill me." Alas, he was killed the next day. 18 months before, we left our native heath. We were 1,000 strong. The engagements of the Peninsula, Manassas, South Mountain, with the disease incident to our campaigns had reduced us to mere skeletons.
Among the wounded left on the field was a rebel officer of manly appearance. He was wounded in the thigh and appeared to be suffering intense pain. Captain Connor approached him and said, "You are wounded, are you not?" "Yes, in the thigh, and badly," was the reply. "May I inquire your name?" "I'm Major Means, of the 17th South Carolina. May I ask you the same question?" "I am Captain Connor, of the 8th Pennsylvania Reserves." "The Pennsylvania Reserves?" "Yes." "Well, Captain, your men fight like devils. They are driving our men right up this steep mountain. I never could have believed it." "Ah, Major, there is blood in Pennsylvania as well as in South Carolina. I'm convinced of that."
The division left the mountain gap on the morning of the 15th and marched beyond Keedysville, bivouacking on the forks of the Big and Little Antietam.
Early in the morning, our division moved off to the right of the Keedysville and Williamsport Road, where it laid until near 3 o'clock in the afternoon, during which time we received sugar, coffee, and a few crackers. At this time, our regiment numbered 171 rank and file and 4 commissioned officers present for duty.
On the afternoon of the 16th, about 2 p.m., the division, constituting the advance of Hooker's Corps, moved by the direction of the general commanding the corps on the road to Williamsport, where, after crossing the bridge over the main Antietam, the head of the column was moved to the left cross country, advancing on what was understood to be the enemy's left flank.
It was near 3 o'clock in the afternoon when our division, followed by Ricketts and Doubleday's, which comprised Hooker's Corps, crossed the Antietam at a ford and the upper bridge, and advanced to attack, and if possible, to turn the enemy's left.
The whole advance moved forward steadily but cautiously for about 3/4 of a mile, when the enemy's pickets were discovered extending in a line across a plowed field in front of a large strip of woods, in which a large body were massed. They at once opened upon us a raking fire from the infantry, which was replied to, the reserve of our regiment being at once called to the support of our skirmishers. After remaining in the position some 15 minutes, Colonel McNeil gave the order to charge and drive the enemy from the woods, gallantly placing himself in the advance. He led the command to within a few paces of the woods when he fell, pierced to the heart by a rifle ball. Still we did not pause, but drove the enemy from the woods and maintained our position during the night, reinforcements having come to our assistance.
During the night, we laid in support of Cooper's battery, which continued firing until after 9 o'clock. Through the night, shots were continually exchanged between ours and the enemy's pickets, who laid within a short distance of each other in the second woods.
Lying upon our arms in the woods in rear of the Miller House at Antietam, we were subjected to a galling fire of canister from a battery not over 1/4 mile to our right. The discharges, as the balls came plunging amid the trees, making a racket as though to sustain life, was impossible in our position, yet very few were injured by their fire. I remember that General Meade stood in front of where I was hugging the ground, seemingly unconscious of the danger. It was an enigma to me how a man could be so collected under the circumstances. "I wish," said he, "that I had 2 good regiments. I'd take that damned battery. By 2 good regiments, I mean 800 men. You are but 400. In the morning, General Meade returned to the same position, and, possibly remembering his remarks of the evening before, said, "Boys, we lost a golden opportunity of our lives. That battery is supported by only a picket line. I thought at least supported by a line of battle. But never mind, we'll still have an opportunity to try our mettle.
As soon as daylight appeared on the following morning, the 17th instant, the enemy again opened upon us. We remained in our position until our ammunition was expended, when, relieved by another regiment, we were ordered to fall back to supply ourselves afresh with ammunition.
About 2 o'clock in the morning, the Bucktails, who were determined the reserves, should have the honor of opening the second day's fight, as they had the first, opened a brisk fire, but they getting short of ammunition, we were sent to relieve them, arriving just as the gray of the morning. Deploying, we crept on our bellies to our position and opened a heavy fire upon the enemy, both parties keeping the ground and maintaining their position.
My sensations at Antietam were a contradiction. When we were in line, closed in mass, passing to the front through the wood at half distance, the boom of cannon and the hurtling shells that crashed through the trees or exploding found its lodgment in human flesh. The minis sizzing and savagely spotting the trees. The death-like silence save the steady men of our officers. The shock to the nerves were indefinable. One stands, as it were, on the brink of eternity as he goes into action. One man alone steps from the ranks and cowers behind a large tree. His nerves gone. He could go no farther. General Meade sees him and, calling a sergeant, says, "Get that man in the ranks!" The sergeant responds. The man refuses. General Meade rushes up with, "I'll move him!" Whipping out his saber, he deals the man a blow. He falls. Who he was, I do not know. The general has no time to tarry or make inquiries. A lesson to those witnessing the scene. The whole transaction was like that of a panorama. I felt at the time the action was cruel and needless on the part of the general. I changed my mind when I became an officer, when with sword and pistol drawn to enforce discipline by keeping my men in place when going into conflict.
I saw the enemy were driving our men from the cornfield. I immediately deployed both brigades and formed the line of battle along the fence bordering the cornfield.
I formed my line of battle close to the fence and instructed my men to lie down and await orders. We had not been long in this position when I discovered the New York 14th coming out of the corn in some confusion, hotly pursued by the enemy. We held our fire until the enemy advanced to within 25 yards of us, when we delivered an entire volley of the regiment, driving them back in confusion.
When the nerves are thus unstrung, I have known relief by a silly remark. Thus at Antietam, when in line of battle in front of the wood and exposed to a galling fire from the cornfield, standing, waiting, expectant with what next, the minis zipping by occasionally, one making an awful thud as it struck some unfortunate. As thus we stood listlessly, breathing a silent prayer, our hearts having ceased to pulsate or our minds on home and loved ones, expecting soon to be mangled or perhaps killed, someone makes an idiotic remark. Thus at this time it is mangled in its high nasal twang with, "Damn sharp skirmishing in front." There is a laugh. It is infectious, and we are once more called back to life.
I received an order from the general commanding the corps to detach a brigade to reinforce our troops in the woods on the left. I directed Magleton's brigade to move in that direction, which order was promptly executed, notwithstanding the brigade, moving by the flank, was subjected to a warm fire from the cornfield.
As we neared the grove, it was at the corner of the field. A regiment of rebels, who had laid concealed among the tall corn, arose and poured upon us the most withering volley we had ever felt. Another and another followed, and a continuous rattle rent the air. We could not stop to reply, we could but hurry on. The slaughter was fearful. I never saw men fall so fast. I was obliged to step over them at every step.
When surprised by the 6th Georgia Regiment, lying immediately behind the fence at the celebrated cornfield, allowing our regiment to approach within 30 feet, and then pouring in a volley that decimated our ranks fully one half, the regiment was demoralized. I was worse. I was stampeded. I did not expect to stop this side of the Pennsylvania line. I met a tall, thin soldier, very boyish in nature, but cool as a cucumber, his hat off, which he was lustily swinging, who yelled, "Rally, boys, rally! Die like men, don't run like dogs!" Instantly all fear vanished. Why can I not stand and take what this boy can? I commenced loading and firing, and from this on I was as comfortable as I had been in more pleasant places.
The gap made by the withdrawal of Magleton was soon filled by the enemy, whose infantry advanced boldly through the cornfield to the woods. Seeing this, I rode up to Ransom's battery and directed his guns on their advancing column.
Horton had gone down, his foot shot off. The colors he had firmly planted in the ground. Several of us begged him to give us the colors that we might save them. "Stay and defend them," was his answer. The enemy rushed on the colors. Horton, with pistol, held the flag upright, defended. It was a grand fight. A member of the 6th Georgia, when not over a rod from the colors, fired, and Horton fell dead. 2nd Lieutenant Walsh came running up and shot the assailant dead.
I observed, not 30 yards from me, 2 stout rebels assisting a wounded comrade from the field, supporting his fainting form between them. I could have killed one of them. Their backs were presented toward me very temptingly. I was going to fire, but at that moment I heard the wounded man groan. I hesitated. Could I shoot one of the men who were bearing him away and allow him again to fall to the earth? I could not. I sought another mark, and seeing a rebel in the act of loading his gun just at the edge of the cornfield, I fired at him.
Truth compels me to say that I never despised a tree when in action, unless the other fellows were behind it.
I was in the act of ramming down a ball at the time, and I would have finished, but my left foot, of its own accord, raised from the ground. A benumbing sensation ran through my leg, and I felt the hot blood streaming down my thigh. The truth flashed upon me. I was wounded.
General Gibbon then ordered me to advance to the corn. As his brigade was on my right, I advanced and continued driving the enemy out of the corn, capturing 2 stands of colors which have already been forwarded to headquarters, until we came to the outer edge of the field, where we remained firing at a new brigade of the enemy who were advancing through an open field. My ammunition by this time was running very low, and we were compelled to empty the cartridge boxes of our dead and wounded to gain a supply. As my men were dropping very fast and their ammunition exhausted, I was compelled, very reluctantly, to fall back or be cut to pieces by the new troops advancing against me. I withdrew my regiment and formed in a gully in the rear of the cornfield, where I remained until I was ordered still further to the rear, where I met General Meade, who directed me to form my regiment along the line of a fence to the rear of Cooper's and Simpson's batteries, which we received ammunition and remained the balance of the day without being again engaged.
At this time, about 10 a.m., my division had been engaged for 5 hours and their ammunition was being exhausted. I therefore welcomed the arrival of Banks' Corps, the left column of which, commanded by the gallant Mansfield, moved up to our support in the woods on the left, and a column under General Williams moved up to the woods on the right by the turnpike. By 2 p.m., the division of the Pennsylvania Reserves, now commanded by General Seymour, will organize on this ridge, supply with ammunition, and held in readiness to repel an attack if the enemy should attempt one on our right flank, and assist in any advance we might make. The division went into action under 3,000 strong and lost and killed and wounded over 570, 20%.
Permit me to give a personal matter. After the war, I renewed an acquaintance made at the time of the Battle of Antietam. My friend Gates, mortally wounded, was a friend of the Reverend David Long, pastor of the Dunkard Church. By his request, I had gone to the home of Mr. Long to inform them of his mishap and that he desired to see them. I was kindly received, and a friendship sprang up between us. September 17, 1867, at the dedication of the cemetery, I renewed acquaintance, and it ended in my marriage to the daughter of the Dunkard parson, who is still my companion to bless, cheer, and comfort me. Thus Antietam, to me, has been a benefaction.